A bolt of lightning tore across the late-night sky, illuminating the modest home in the quiet suburb of Pinebridge. Thunder shook the windows with a mighty roar, and a single, pounding knock broke the stillness of the hour. Little did anyone inside realize that this very moment would shatter their peaceful world and launch a desperate battle for truth. Where are you watching from? Share in the comments below, and be sure to hit subscribe for more inspiring stories like this. Welcome to the Motivation for Success channel, where we feature stories of hope, resilience, and the extraordinary strength of everyday people. In the events that follow, you'll see how a determined mother fights to prove her husband's innocence, supported by the unwavering belief of their young daughter, who knows in her heart that her father did nothing wrong. Late on that stormy evening in Pinebridge, Nadia and Travis, along with their 8-year-old daughter Helen, were awakened by piercing red and blue lights dancing across the walls of their cozy one-story house. Nadia, who worked exhausting shifts at a healthcare clinic, usually returned each evening to find Travis's homemade dinners and a warm hug from Helen. On weekends, the trio took trips to the local park, where Travis played catch with Helen or taught her silly songs. Their small home exuded the kind of comfort money can't buy. That night, however, the front door rattled under the force of an urgent knock. Nadia, heart pounding, answered to find stern-faced officers led by Officer Wade standing on the porch. They announced they had a warrant for Travis's arrest, offering barely any details as they took him into custody. Helen rushed down the stairs, clutching her stuffed rabbit, Bun, sobbing while Nadia held her back, whispering, "There must be a mistake." Yet by the time dawn lit the sky, Travis was gone, and Nadia felt as though the cheerful life they'd built was crumbling beneath her feet. The officer's accusations pointed to a grievous assault on an elderly neighbor named Mr. Larkin. Witnesses swore they saw someone matching Travis's appearance hurrying away in the dark, and somehow, his wallet had ended up near Mr. Larkin's porch. Pinebridge's rumor mill churned out wild theories, blaming Travis for harboring hidden grudges or living a secret double life. Nadia tried to keep up a brave front for Helen, but found herself working extra hours to cover mounting legal fees and drifting from friends too uncertain or uncomfortable to offer help. Neighbors shunned her, some out of fear, others out of scorn. At the grocery store, she endured pitying glances. At home, she collapsed onto the couch each night, haunted by the emptiness of Travis's absence. Meanwhile, Helen faced torment at school, whispers from classmates, pointed stares, and nervous parents telling their children not to associate with that family. Each time she thought of her dad, she'd cry softly, missing his gentle laugh and the bedtime stories that once filled her nights. Through her exhaustion, Nadia sensed a determination taking root within her. Despite the crushing weight of public opinion, she vowed to unearth the truth that would bring Travis home. One mild afternoon, Nadia tried to calm her frazzled nerves while Helen played out back. The chatter of birds and distant traffic usually soothed Nadia, but that day it couldn't erase her anxiety. Suddenly, Helen ran over, breathless. She tugged Nadia to the fence, where they crouched behind bushes, eavesdropping on 2 uniformed officers talking just a few yards away. Nadia's heart pounded as they overheard the men discussing how the wallet found near Mr. Larkin's house might not be enough for a definitive conviction, and how other, similar burglaries in town remained unsolved. One officer even said that the case against Travis didn't feel right. When the officers walked away, Helen whispered, "Mom, you heard that, right?" Nadia realized, with a jolt of hope, that the real culprit might still be out there, someone who'd committed break-ins before, planting evidence to frame Travis. But whenever Nadia tried to tell others, they brushed her aside with polite sympathy. Mr. Connors, the overworked defense lawyer assigned to Travis, had little time to chase theories that sounded, to most ears, like desperate denial. Even co-workers at the clinic avoided the topic. Nadia, drained of options, longed for someone who would listen. That evening, as she tucked Helen into bed, her daughter placed Bun in Nadia's lap and said gently, "We can't give up. Daddy needs us." So began a new phase of Helen's life. Quietly, she decided to seek the truth herself. Each night, she wrote in a pink journal hidden behind her dresser, recording snippets of rumors or overheard remarks. She asked adults sly questions that seemed harmless for an 8-year-old to pose. Who might have disliked Mr. Larkin? Did they recall weird happenings on the night in question? Under the guise of being lost, she sneaked a glance at some documents in Mr. Connors's office, gleaning bits of information. She soon noticed that multiple break-ins had followed the same peculiar pattern as Mr. Larkin's attack, except this time Travis's wallet was apparently planted. Even more telling was a rumored feud between Mr. Larkin and a solitary, grumpy figure named Mr. Gray, rumored to have lost money in questionable ways. Some in Pinebridge said they'd seen Mr. Gray wandering after midnight, carrying a toolbox. Could he be behind it all? Helen wasn't sure, but her suspicion grew. She felt silly suspecting a cranky recluse, but the nagging sense that he was at the heart of it refused to leave her alone. Her faith in this hunch soared after she watched a late-night TV courtroom drama, where a child's testimony upended a powerful figure's alibi. Wiping away tears from the emotional episode, Helen told Bun Bun, "If that kid on TV can help catch a criminal, so can I." As the trial date for Travis's case loomed, Nadia tried to shield Helen from the tension, but Helen was adamant, she wanted to come. Holding her pink journal and Bun Bun, she followed Nadia into the fluorescent-lit corridors of Pinebridge Courthouse. Inside, reporters milled about, calling out questions Nadia was in no mood to answer. Tension ran high from the moment Ms. Delgado, the prosecutor, painted Travis as an angry neighbor with an axe to grind against Mr. Larkin. Witness after witness claimed to have glimpsed Travis near the scene, or heard him argue with Mr. Larkin days before. Helen's heart sank at the sight of Travis, pale and gaunt, looking like a cornered man who'd nearly lost hope. But on the trial's third day, Helen overheard Ms. Delgado mention a missing piece of evidence. Mr. Larkin's backyard camera had been found broken and useless. Helen's mind flashed to Mr. Gray, tinkering with a fence-side camera not long ago. Could he have sabotaged vital footage? During recess, she tugged insistently on Mr. Connors's coat, begging him to let her speak. Nadia backed her up, and Mr. Connors, somewhat reluctantly, approached Judge Fellows with a request to allow Helen's testimony. The gallery stirred, puzzled at why a child might be called to the witness stand. A hush fell as Helen marched forward, Bun Bun clutched against her. Judge Fellows asked kindly if she understood the oath to tell the truth, and Helen nodded, steeling herself. Ms. Delgado expressed skepticism that an 8-year-old's perspective could be reliable. But the judge insisted on hearing her. Voice trembling, Helen recounted how she saw Mr. Gray fiddling with Mr. Larkin's camera on a day it shouldn't have been touched, and how she overheard him threaten Mr. Larkin with dire consequences. The tension in the courtroom snapped taut as Mr. Gray, seated toward the back, turned visibly pale. Ms. Delgado tried to dismiss it, but Judge Fellows allowed Helen to finish. When Helen offered her pink journal as proof, complete with meticulously logged dates and details about other break-ins, Mr. Connors requested a recess to review the notes. Cameras outside the courthouse captured footage of Mr. Gray rushing out with a furious scowl. Nadia embraced Helen, murmuring how proud she was, even as Helen's stomach churned with nerves. A child's testimony was no small risk, and she worried Mr. Gray would soon see her as an enemy. During the recess, Mr. Connors and Detective Myers delved into Helen's journal. It matched multiple unsolved burglaries in Pinebridge, all involving tampered security cameras and stolen valuables. One notable detail was that Mr. Gray had withdrawn significant cash shortly before Mr. Larkin was attacked, a red flag for a possible motive. Out in the hallway, Nadia and Helen watched Mr. Gray pacing, sweat glistening on his brow. He occasionally shot Helen a venomous look, but she refused to avert her gaze, recalling the fictional child witness who found the courage to speak. When the court resumed, Ms. Delgado stuck to her initial argument about Travis's wallet and witness sightings, but Mr. Connors introduced the new angle, the possibility that the wallet had been planted, and that Mr. Gray was truly responsible. Officer Adams, the lead detective, had to concede that the wallet showed unidentified smudges, suggesting someone else's handling. The judge allowed further investigation into Mr. Gray's financial records, which deepened the suspicion that he might be behind more crimes than anyone realized. By the following day, the courthouse was abuzz with reporters. Mr. Gray, forced to testify, tried to downplay his connection to Mr. Larkin, but references to unexplained withdrawals and tampered security cameras pointed to him. Under unrelenting questioning, he finally cracked, admitting that he only intended to scare Mr. Larkin, who threatened to expose the money he'd stolen. Nadia's heart soared. Helen trembled at Mr. Gray's involuntary confession. But just as it seemed Travis would be cleared on the spot, the judge called a recess, and Ms. Delgado was seen huddling with officials and Mr. Gray's lawyer, indicating there might be more secrets to uncover. Sure enough, that evening, Mr. Connors told Nadia and Helen that a fresh search of Mr. Gray's home revealed signs he hadn't acted alone. Some items bore a second party's DNA, pointing to a possible accomplice who was still at large. Frustratingly, the case against Travis remained open, with the judge granting a delay. Nadia felt her fragile hopes dashed once again. Life at home grew more tense, especially after an officer named Myers discovered a silver locket in Mr. Gray's closet, which bizarrely carried Helen's fingerprints. Helen suddenly recalled picking up a glinting silver locket near Mr. Larkin's porch after the attack, dropping it when Nadia called. The evidence suggested the accomplice might have retrieved it later and hidden it among Mr. Gray's possessions, raising more questions. Then, one morning, news arrived that Mr. Larkin's memory was returning, in bits and pieces. He recalled hearing two distinct voices that night, likely Mr. Gray and someone else he recognized but couldn't name. Helen's nightmares intensified as she imagined a friend, neighbor, or coworker who might still be skulking about, orchestrating the entire frame-up. Nadia doubled her guard, especially for Helen's safety. She locked every window and door, pacing the house late at night. At last, a revelation materialized from Mr. Larkin's bank records. Detective Myers called Nadia and Helen to the station to explain that the injured man had been making suspicious monthly payments to a man named Dalton Pierce, an ex-con who once worked under Mr. Larkin's management. Dalton's name also surfaced in Mr. Gray's phone logs. The authorities believed Dalton might be the mysterious accomplice. But just as a warrant was issued, another officer reported that Dalton vanished, cleaning out his apartment overnight. Helen felt a chill, realizing the real criminal roamed Pine Bridge or beyond, perpetuating the lie that put Travis behind bars. Days later, a shadowy phone call threatened Helen, ordering her silence. Police arrived swiftly but found no sign of the caller. Neither Nadia nor Helen slept well, haunted by the notion that Dalton might be prowling just outside. One pre-dawn morning, glass shattered at the rear of the house. Officers, previously stationed outside, rushed in. Nadia watched, shaking, as they tackled a hooded figure in the kitchen. Removing the hood revealed a furious Dalton Pierce, who spat venomous promises that it still wasn't over. The police handcuffed him and hauled him away. Though relief coursed through Helen at seeing him arrested, fear lingered. What if it wasn't enough? For hours, the police combed the house for evidence, and Detective Myers commended Helen's bravery, reminding Nadia that they'd pushed to set Travis free. Sure enough, searching Dalton's hideout revealed a rusted lockbox stuffed with cash, plus a ledger detailing hush payments, blackmail, and direct references to Gray, Pierce, Larkin. The pages described how Dalton and Mr. Gray had targeted Mr. Larkin for threatening to expose their embezzlement. They planned the burglary carefully, then planted Travis's wallet. At last, no one could deny the truth. Detective Myers told Nadia, "This changes everything. We'll request that charges against Travis be dropped." Helen dissolved into grateful tears, while Nadia covered her mouth, stunned by the final proof that vindicated Travis. Soon, a follow-up hearing confirmed Travis's complete innocence, painting Mr. Gray and Dalton Pierce as co-conspirators in a string of Pine Bridge crimes. In court, the prosecutor spelled out how they had pinned the blame on Travis with a single well-placed wallet. When Judge Fellows pronounced Travis fully cleared, the gallery broke into applause. News cameras flashed madly, capturing the image of Nadia and Helen flinging themselves at Travis, all three laughing and crying. Helen whispered, "We never stopped believing in you," and Travis, voice choked with emotion, said, "You saved me, kiddo." The roar of reporters' questions was drowned by the family's profound joy. That same night, Travis at last re-entered the house he'd left in handcuffs so many months prior. Helen latched onto him in an unbreakable hug, while Nadia pressed her face into his shoulder. They stayed up talking into the early hours, splitting a pizza, exchanging stories of every small victory and heartbreak that had led them here. Travis recalled the misery of jail, the clanking steel doors, the hopeless murmurs of other inmates, and how it was Helen's unwavering confidence in him that carried him through. Yet nightmares continued to haunt them all. Some nights Travis sat bolt upright, reliving the memory of officers barging in. Nadia would wake in a cold sweat, alarmed at any mention of lawsuits or court motions. Helen returned to school, adjusting to classmates who eyed her with a mix of admiration and residual wariness, some even calling her a kid detective. She learned to hold her chin high, unbothered by stares. Pinebridge residents offered the Davies family a hesitant acceptance. Neighbors, once so quick to believe rumors, arrived with casseroles and apologies, acknowledging their hasty judgment. A local journalist published a retraction and lauded Helen for her fearless actions. Though trust wouldn't be rebuilt overnight, Nadia and Travis opted to show grace, convinced that harboring resentment would only harm them further. Helen learned the significance of empathy. She'd endured scorn, so she strove not to perpetuate it. One day in the living room, Travis turned off the TV after seeing a report about another wrongful arrest. He looked at Nadia and Helen and said, "We got lucky that you, Helen, uncovered key clues. Other families might not have such a champion." Together, they conceived an organization designed to help the wrongfully accused. Helen proposed calling it Small Voices, Big Truths, a nod to her own experience of being an 8-year-old no one took seriously, yet who ultimately changed everything. They drew up plans to share their cautionary tale at community centers or libraries, teaching parents and children to never dismiss a child's observations and encouraging them to stand up against injustice. With fresh vigor, Nadia resumed her shifts at the clinic, no longer weighed down by unrelenting dread, while Travis found employment at a local bakery. He returned home each afternoon with flour on his sleeves, his warmth back in full force. Helen, blossoming with self-assurance, excelled academically and began speaking at small gatherings about her experiences. But one evening, a plain envelope arrived with no return address, containing only a typed note: "Never assume the fight is over. Truth can hide in unexpected places." Helen and Nadia felt unsettled by its cryptic tone, but Travis kept a steady calm, promising they'd face any new challenges united, as they'd done all along. He contacted Detective Myers, who logged the note and recommended caution. Refusing to let caution transform into fear, they continued building their foundation. Helen found a calling in addressing local youth groups, telling them how a pink journal and a stuffed rabbit helped reveal the real criminals. She'd close her talks by saying, "No matter how small you feel, your voice can change someone's life." Her parents, glowing with pride, saw how adversity had forged Helen's remarkable resolve. Weeks later, Travis suggested they visit Mr. Larkin, who was back at home, slowly regaining his strength. They found him leaning on a cane, tears of gratitude in his eyes. He apologized for not remembering sooner what truly happened that night, lamenting the misery that cost the family so dearly. Travis reassured him that they were all victims of Mr. Gray and Dalton's scheme, and that no one truly blamed him. The weight of guilt lifted from the elderly man, replaced by relief and a sense of closure that only direct forgiveness can bring. Back in their own house, the Davies family settled deeper into a second chance at happiness. Helen made amends with classmates who once turned their backs on her, and they soon discovered the same bright, kind-hearted child who'd braved the courtroom. Nadia devoted extra hours at the clinic to help families in need, recalling all too well how isolation and financial pressures nearly broke her. Travis found a voice in community activism, advocating that investigators must dig deeper before charging suspects, illustrating how one planted wallet can ruin a man's life. Nights returned to the comforting routine of bedtime stories, with Travis pausing every now and then to remind Helen, "Don't forget how brave you were." She'd grin, hugging Bun Bun, telling him she only did what any daughter would do for the father she loved. Over time, Pinebridge stopped seeing them through the lens of scandal. The family's story spread beyond town lines, featured in radio segments and local magazines. Helen sometimes quipped about becoming a detective or a lawyer, determined to spare others from the ordeal they endured. Her parents would nod, beaming at how her struggles and triumphs had produced a child wise beyond her years. The entire journey taught them that the smallest act of courage can shatter the largest lie, and that empathy can heal even the most painful rifts. And so we come full circle. If you're touched by the Davies family's battle for truth, consider sharing kindness today, a willing ear, a supportive word, a gentle moment of understanding. You might be surprised how far such an action can go in helping someone stand up to injustice. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments, and remember to subscribe to the Motivation for Success channel for more stories of hope, grit, and the power of everyday people. No matter how dark the odds, or how insurmountable the evidence may seem, truth has a way of emerging when love and perseverance refuse to surrender. If this story moved you, consider spreading kindness today.